Hi everyone, it's Jack from WhatCulture.com and I'm here with the second ever edition of Ups and Downs. Now, if you watched last week's show, you'll know that this is based on a weekly article which the brilliant Scott Carlson writes over at WhatCulture.com. It's always well worth checking out and you can find that in the description. So without further ado, let's go through all the ups and all the downs. Let's up those downs. I need a catchphrase. First of all, the pre-show match between Baron Corbin and Dolph Ziggler, and this was under no DQ rules, which you may have thought meant that Baron was going to be put over as a monster. He'd be hitting Ziggler with chairs, he'd be slamming him through tables. Certainly not. He hit him with a low blow, and that's how he won the match. I'm afraid that's a down. Secondly, the opening tag match of the main show between Luke Gallows and Carl Anderson, the Club, and Jimmy and Jey Uso, the Bloodline. We've already discussed how terrible their names are. But fortunately, the booking decision of this match was absolutely spot on. The Club won in dominating fashion, and that's exactly what should have happened as well. So that is our first up of today's show and levels the scores at 1-1. Next up, we have the question of Rusev, who you probably know by now is the new United States champion, and oh my god, isn't that a relief. That's not a knock on Kalisto, he is a fantastic in-ring worker, but his reign has been stale, it's been hampered by unimaginative, uninspired booking, and the fact that the Bulgarian Brute's the new champion really must be considered an up. Next up, Xavier Woods, often the sort of third man of the New Day, if that makes sense. He's often on the outside, and often takes the lead in promos, but doesn't really get to showcase his skills in the ring. He actually picked up the decisive pinfall in his team's win over the Vaudevillains, and also stole the show with a hilarious pre-match promo, so check that out if you missed it. That's an up. Next up, we've got yet another up, and it'll be no surprise to anyone who watched the show live that the Fatal 4-Way match was spectacular. Kevin Owens, Sami Zayn, Cesaro, and the victorious Miz put their absolute all into making the match as good as it should and could have been. There was wonderful pacing, there were several huge spots, there was great storytelling, and all in all, it could be argued that it was the best match of the show as well. We've had several ups in a row, and it looks as though Extreme Rules was pretty much a flawless show, but I'm afraid we're going to have to bring it back down with another down, and oh, this match was a slog. Jericho v Dean Ambrose in the Ambrose Asylum Cage match. If you watch this, you'll know, if you manage to stay awake, that the pair trundled from one spot to the next, climbing up the cage, grabbing a weapon, using it, or in some cases, failing to use it, and then doing the same thing again and again and again, and it stretched on for 26 minutes. Thankfully though, our next point revolves around the finish of that match, which was probably the only exciting part of it. Dean Ambrose reached into a sack, teased the crowd for a bit, and then poured out all those thumbtacks, and oh my god, did Jericho take a nasty bump right on his elbow. There was blood pouring out of his arm. It was, you could argue, the only legitimately extreme moment of Extreme Rules, and we have to give huge credit to Jericho for taking such a horrible bump, so that's most certainly an up. Now we come to the Women's Championship match, and it was kind of underwhelming, wasn't it? But the biggest reason this is a down is the fact that Dana Brooke's interference made very, very little sense. We know that Dana's been filling in for Emma as the secondary heel on the main roster since the Australian's injury, but there's been no logical reason really for Dana to get involved with the Flares. Hopefully there's time for this to be ironed out on tonight's Monday Night Raw, but for now I'm afraid that is a negative point of the show. And finally we get to the last match of the show, Roman Reigns v AJ Styles, and it should come as no surprise that this was a fantastic match because we all know how phenomenal AJ can be, and Roman's really upped his game recently too, so none of us were too surprised to see the match deliver, but I think a few of us were surprised to see it deliver as much as it did. There were some wicked announce table spots, there were a lot of false finishes that had us almost thinking that AJ was going to win. That's all an up, put that there. But then, of course, the predictable thing happened, and I'm afraid it is a down. Roman Reigns hit AJ with a single spear and won. I don't have too much of an issue with Roman retaining. You have to make a champion look strong, even if he is unpopular, but it's the way he retains every single time. He soaks up so much punishment. He kicked out of 2 Styles clashes, one on a chair, and then he hit AJ with a single spear, 1, 2, 3. But finally, just when it looked like all was lost and Extreme Rules was going to have an unjustifiably negative ending, oh, it happened. CrossFit Jesus is back again. Seth Rollins came out of nowhere. And credit to Kevin Dunn, who I've never been the biggest fan of, but the way he shot that was actually very effective because you saw the crowd lose their minds first. And then when Rollins came into the ring, blasted Reigns with the pedigree and held the title aloft. The place went nuts. It's one of the moments of the year so far. It's an up for sure, and hopefully this leads to an improvement in the next few months. So that's all we've got time for on the second ever edition of Ups and Downs. I've been Jack from WhatCulture.com. Be sure to check out Scott Carlson's article on which this video is based, and I'll see you soon.
WhatCulture.com are releasing a new magazine about wrestling, and it's called Wrestling. It'll have 140 pages of timeless wrestling content, including a brand new How WWE Should Have Booked written by this virulent son of a bitch. It will also have a list of the 100 best wrestling matches of all time compiled by WhatCulture staff and wrestling insiders. So the magazine is available to pre-order now. Follow the link in the description and enjoy WhatCulture.com's Wrestling.